Things that want to, yeah, thank you. Appreciate it. Because this etude is all about smoothing out leaps, number one concern should be how to make a melody out of this disjunct, material. Think linearly rather than the execution of all of these leaps from a musical standpoint. For my taste, this etude alternates between having the top voice be the main melody and the lower voice being kind of a counter melody, and also with specific alterations, and it alternates that with just a more linear pattern. So for example, in the first couple measures, melody that I hear rather than we are in G major after all, so ending on the tonic just makes more sense. So thinking about a duet between the melody and the counter the harmony really helps you to differentiate the two. What the tendency will be is to do kind of the opposite. Emphasize the lower and back away into the upper. And that doesn't give us the linear quality that we want. Instead, think about, if we're thinking about the top notes and lengthening the top notes and taking care of the ends of them, then you get a much more linear motion. Try to put virtually no space between the end of the top note and the beginning of the lower note. Not. If he wanted a lift, he would have written a little staccato note over that. These are just straight slurs, so that implies as little space as possible, in my opinion. Exploring different ways to differentiate between a main melodic material and accompanying material is also helpful. And what you can also do with your teacher is you play the top line, have your teacher play the harmony underneath, and move in sixths. That's very pretty. Okay, so musically, it's pretty well planned out, so and I generally like what's printed. Now these two-note slurs, making them as smooth as possible is very, very important. So students will have a tendency to overcompensate on these upward leaps with using mostly embouchure. Most of the time when students see notes go higher on the page, they think, oh, I have to get tighter. And while that's true to some extent with the bassoon, often you do too much, and sound quality suffers, and they overshoot with pitch. So we get something like this. And you massage into the start of the top note, because it's mostly here, and they get the note to speak, and then they relax. So what you can do is instead, don't even think so much about this. Focus just on the fingerings, and then I am of the school where you change your voicing, tongue placement in the back of your throat, vowel shape. Do you guys do that at all, or not really?
I've been introduced to it. It's still really hard.
Okay, as we go, so mid-range playing, it's more of an eh. Everybody say he, he. Yeah, think about where your tongue is in relation to top to bottom. Say it again, he. Now he. Yeah, and try to keep a quasi-bassoon always just say he, but it's not he. That on brass, that'll get you higher, but yeah, keep it right here, he. Yeah, now ha, that's low range playing. He, mid-range, and tenor range and higher, he. Yeah. So, for example, these first two notes, if I don't adjust my voicing, listen to the pitch. I'm not doing anything with my mouth. I don't want to get tighter, because the tighter we get, it constricts our sound quality. So how is the pitch on the beat? Right. Can you put that into words? Not good, right? So now here's with a little voicing. Just a minor adjustment here. And of course, you have to blow a little more air, but I focus more on my tongue placement, and it smooths it out. Okay? And doing that on each one of these, going really slow, I like putting the metronome on 60 with a tuner and just go. And really listen to the start of the upper note. See if it's as clear as possible, and if the pitch is right there, or if it's a split second off and then settling into it. And then you listen for little cracks like that and figure out where they're coming. And that's a half whole thing. Okay, so smoothing out the two-note slurs. Voicing, air support as you go higher, tenor range and above. Now, when we get to E's and F sharps above the staff, you may have to, because we have a couple G to E slurs. Lovely, lovely slur. For example, measure 1, 2, 3, measure 4. That's using the normal fingerings for G and for E. And changing voicing and all of that. And it just doesn't pop out because it's a bassoon. So, if you look on page 4, a nice slur fingering is similar to the normal one, which is 1, 3 resonance and 1, 2, 3 in the right hand. The change is in the right hand. Instead of 1, 2, 3, you lift up your first finger in the right hand. I still get a little crack, so another option there, instead, use a forked finger in your right hand. On mine, it's a little bit smoother. Depends on reed and instrument vocal combinations. So those are 2. Going up to F sharp, the preferred fingering I have there is 2, 3 resonance, 1, 2 F. Should speak pretty clearly. You can also vent your second finger very quickly and cover it back up. Watch my second finger. Opening it up just for a split second helps it speak. Okay? And just because it's a bassoon and because of our fingering system, sometimes we need alternate fingerings for higher. Other fingerings in the back, just for, I'll talk about that F sharp in a second. Lower F sharp, high A, that's the one that I use for pitch and for fullness of sound. Helps keep pitch down, gives a little more ring to the sound. So that's the one that I like. Okay, flicking, talked about that. Also for intonation, I like practicing, I love drones. Love/hate. So with any unaccompanied piece, there's always an implied bass, ground bass behind you. So, figuring out what key you are at the very instant that you want in this etude is very helpful, like playing with a G drone for a lot of it, or just having your teacher play the lower note of these 2 upward slurs for a while you find where the upper note is. Very helpful. Excuse me. Or playing chords on the piano while you play. Talked about main melody versus accompanimental material. Rests and breaks of sound don't always equal breaths. For example, in this etude, the 2 places where I would not recommend breathing on rests are, oh, my apologies, there. Measure 7 on that 8th rest, and then the same material in measure 29. I do not breathe there. Or measure 14. It helps keep the energy going across the rest instead of then you have to get set up and hit that high G and accent it. Just don't breathe there. And at these tempos, you should find something where you could comfortably go from measure 12 all the way to the fermata at measure 16. Now, measure 29, I could be convinced because of there's a piano retard at the end and you want to make sure you have enough comfortable air to finish it out relaxed. I could be convinced of taking a breath there. Me personally, I don't need one, but that is the other option. And so I always tell my students, only breathe as much as you need to in whatever you're playing. Silent rests don't automatically equal breaths. Somehow we always get trained to associate these 2. Also, another issue with this etude, the first 2 quarter notes. have to absolutely be in tempo. A lot of times I hear, and then the eights are in a completely different tempo. So subdivide, and just make sure you're setting a tempo right from your very first two notes. Okay? 3 measures before the end. A lot of people like to diminuendo and retard at the very same time, but that's not what's printed. Make sure the retard comes a measure later. And then right hand pinky for the whole F sharp. I use that one almost exclusively rather than the thumb and back, just for 4th line F sharp. It's a little darker, lower in pitch, less nasally sounding. Whenever possible, use that. Now, a couple times I used, for example, measure 11 and also measure 31. We have F sharps in a piano, actually the whole thing's an indulgent quality, I would argue. And it's really tough to get this really not very pretty note as soft as we want it. And so there is a muted fingering that I have listed there. It's basically a combination of pinky F sharp and thumb F sharp and adding the pancake key. Rather than. Works for the lower octave too. So there are occasions where we need that. Okay? Okay, so any questions over that, A2?